I do, but I don't know if you guys can quite afford me.
Like stepping down. The guy we're getting is like 6'8". Yeah. He's got a son. I was like, oh, this guy. He's like, what sport? I'm like, which one does he want?
Hey, Joe. Good to see you.
Congratulations.
Hey, thank you. Yeah.
I haven't seen the full order yet.
What's that?
I haven't seen the full.
So I
order.
think you're second.
I don't know.
Okay.
I think I'm in.
Yeah.
Hi, Kathy. Kathy will start off and then she'll pass it to Tyrone. Hi, Kathy.
Microphone.
Nice to see you. And
Rochester
then
native.
Tyrone will pass it to Mike. I knew that. And Mike will pass it to Joe, and then Joe pass to Leah and come back to Joe for questions. We're gonna do a mic check here in a minute, I hope. ASL interpreters, so they'll stay on either side, whatever side is most comfortable on. And then if we can just keep the questions to you, we'll have people standing behind you to be supporters. Everyone here is today speakers and speakers' names. Denise is so good at those things. And then we should be good to go, but everybody here.
Thank you so much for being here, Tyrone. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, you guys did an amazing job of organizing your thoughts and making sure things had different, so we really appreciate it. I'm gonna check with Troy on the mic check, otherwise just project your voice as well as you can. And it'll be good. And you saw the visuals that we have? And they saw it was kind of the, they'll bring. Yes.
Speaker.
That's right.
No, I didn't want to say that.
Superintendent.
Yes. No, not. And we are in good hands.
Weird world.
Here, I'll see. I'm gonna send a picture of this.
Stand, I will stand back there. Just be doing oh, yeah. Oh, well, it's nice to see you. Water money. Like this.
Yeah, so like we're gonna come talk to our sleepers on my preparation side.
I don't know if you remember me, John.
Yes, John, good to see you. Yes.
See you. Other life.
Yes. Yep. So you're still in Robinson?
I am still on the board in Robinson.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, I don't know if it's a promotion, I feel bad for all the
That's a good thing.
new opportunity.
Absolutely.
Right up whatever.
You guys have a sign.
You know, we're later. I'm just here for these guys.
Fair enough.
I said next to these guys.
I already did. I like to be incognito.
Oh, right. You already tried me.
Right.
I do like things.
That's why we love our city.
Keep up with everything. I remember that was an actual, you have to go back out and just an interim title. Yeah, that's what Verizon wanted us to do. We had
to stop doing work permanent.
Just superintendent.
Just
What do you got?
yeah, not permanent.
As opposed to. He's like,
Podium as orders of special education today. Go ahead and do that. We've got our speakers that'll be up front to stand behind them, kind of in a supportive way, and please if we can make sure that our visuals are open. If members of the press need a press kit,
Can I leave my iPad up so you can? I'll just bring it.
Oh, look, I finally caught him a joke.
Took some cheating to do that. No, yeah. Where's your wrist? Just a tie.
Where can I sneak? Here. Right here.
Maybe a red nose. That's all.
We've got just a few minutes. Right? We'll be ready to rock and roll.
Okay.
Does anyone else want to sign? I think it'd be appropriate for me to just kind of like go back and forth with it while I'm talking. but-
Is that distracting if I'm holding it behind
No,
her?
that's
I have then at least it's.
That's why we have that.
Sticking
on my head. I won't let it stick out. Your tongue is sticking out.
Any others? I have a full stack.
Yes.
Oh, that's right. I talked to him.
I'll check with that. Denise, where do you want us to go after we're done speaking?
Into the crowd.
Okay.
Back aside. She recruited. I did what you told me to, Mari.
So Jen.
She teaches at Gothard.
She
was, yeah.
Okay.
So she's first grade. Logan's doing the egg program. They lost their egg teacher. So Logan, you know, he said, I just bought this farm, but sure, his teacher for his semester. And might be later. That's the egg teacher we've had in a while. Wow. He doesn't have a licensure, so.
Okay.
He can just.
You're gonna give me a signal.
Yeah.
I'm not just thinking of very little.
Smile.
Good afternoon. Thank you for attending today's press conference. My name is Kathy Nathan. I'm a parent representing the Minnesota PTA, and I serve as a school board member in Rochester. Today, I'm standing with school superintendents, school board members, business officials, principals, parents, and others who want to urge the legislature to pay their debt in full this session for special education. We want to talk specifically about what is called the special education cross subsidy. Our schools must, by state and federal law, or in other words, are mandated to provide special education programming. But those mandated special education services cost far more than the funding provided by the state to pay for them. There are not enough dollars coming into the district's account to cover the costs of special education services. So districts pull money out of the general education account to cover those costs. This difference is called the cross subsidy. As the map shows, every single school district in Minnesota has a cross subsidy. Not enough money in the special education account to cover services. And over the years, costs have grown due to increases in the number of students needing services and the complexity of services needed. Yet over the years, the legislature has never completely funded our district's special education services. Therefore, a debt is owed by the state legislature to our school districts. This year, the legislature has an opportunity to pay this debt with a multi-billion-dollar surplus. $822 million, not even $1 billion of the surplus, 9% of the surplus could go to paying the special education cross-subsidy in full. School districts serve all students who walk through our doors, no matter their specific needs. And all students are being harmed when funds are being pulled from the general education account to cover the cross-subsidy. If the cross-subsidy were paid in full, what could districts do with the general fund dollars instead? As a school board member, I think about how the $19 million cross-subsidy in my district could instead be used to fuel the innovation we need to meet the ever more complex learning and social emotional needs of our students. And I know parents do not want to see budget cuts in services and programs and staff because the state legislature will not pay their district what they are owed for providing special education services. I'll next introduce Tyrone Clark, a parent from Yoda, and we have others present here that will speak to these issues and more. Legislators, your account is past due. Let's pay the special education cross-subsidy debt now.
Hello, I am Tyrone Clark. I'm a former mayor of the city of Yoda and a current city councilor, and I'm also a parent of a number of children, including one here and a few that are in special education. I think as a rural representative, it really is so important to understand what the impacts are when we're underpaying or providing funds for special education. Rural districts don't have the same capacity that a Albert Lee or St. Paul do. Not that making sure funding isn't there too, but for rural districts, it really has an impact where if we don't get the funds, sometimes those programs, well, they won't just get the support that the students need. And I see this, we have some great special education teachers in Dover Yoda, but at the same time that they need to have all that funding to make sure that we have the paraprofessionals where they need to be, and we have the support for those special education teachers. If that does not happen, it doesn't just impact those students, it impacts the students all across the school district because your bucket's only so big. And when you're a smaller district, it has to be filled from someplace. So really as a parent and as a father, as a husband of a teacher who has special education kids in her classroom, making sure that we have that support for paraprofessionals, for special education teachers is really paramount for those kids and for our overall society. So that's really who I am, and that's why I'm here, is to ask and make sure that we get that support from schools. If we don't get that sort of support in rural districts, sometimes those students will have to leave and move to communities that they can get that support. And really, that's not what we want. We want them to be able to stay and grow up in their communities. We don't want them to have to move for special education. And I really implore you to talk to your legislators and get that. So I'm here to introduce now Superintendent Michael Funk. He's a superintendent of Albert Lee Schools. And funny enough, he used to be my social studies teacher at Dover Yoda. I was told that I would be right before him. And I'm like, well, I'm really looking forward to this. He is a great teacher, and I'm sure he's a great superintendent over in Albert Lee. And I really nice to see him today.
It's nice to see your kids grow up and do great things. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. I've been a superintendent in Minnesota since 2005. As a school leader, I have a few beliefs I'd like to share as I start out. First of all, I believe in providing a quality education for each individual student. I believe if a district is provided a mandate Funding should follow it. I believe in minimizing the tax burden on our local taxpayers. If the legislature takes appropriate action on the special education cross subsidy, 3,500 students, of which 686 receive special education services of our total population. Our cross subsidy in Albert Lea is $3.93 million budget. We receive local funding through operating referendums or board approved levies in the amount of $3.1 million. Again, our cross subsidy is $3.9 million. Local funding that we ask local taxpayers to support our district because of expenses is $3.1 million. As a result of special education costs exceeding government resources, local taxpayers throughout the state, as you can see with the chart in front of me, are being asked to address the cross subsidy at the district level through board action or voter approved levies, as in Albert Lea. Our taxpayers in Albert Lea have stepped up and passed a levy to cover the cost. There's a direct correlation between the levy and the cross subsidy. Not all communities can afford this, as you just heard Tyrell talk about. This creates an inequity for those districts that have higher special education costs and lower property values. Special education costs, like everything else, continue to go up, as Kathy Nathan mentioned. We're also identifying more students in need of special education services. A primary focus in Albert Lea is to have our students operate in an inclusive environment with their peers as much as possible. We also believe it is vital to work with families to provide all the services needed. For example, we have an elementary student in one of our schools who has been identified as severely multiply impaired. His special need education services include vision, deaf, hard of hearing, speech, language, nursing, physical therapy, occupational therapy, developmental adaptive physical education, writing, and he has access to a school social worker. This student is outside of his general education setting less than 20% of his day. He's successful in the classroom with these identified services and paraeducator support, in addition to several accommodations and assistive technology we provide him. As a district and a local community, we are meeting the needs of this and every one of our students. We also believe that the Minnesota legislature has an obligation an onerous tax burden on our communities. The legislature is currently not doing this. The state has a record $9.2 billion surplus and has responsibility to pay its debts. As you can see from the chart on my right, the cross subsidy is 9% of the total surplus. School districts are mandated to provide these education services and provide equitable access to education. So why is the legislature not following up with financing or funding for this mandate? Nearly every school district in Minnesota has a cross subsidy. This is not an urban issue or a rural issue. It's a statewide issue. If the legislature fully funded the cross subsidy, it would provide much additional revenue for districts to meet the needs of our students, and school boards would have the potential opportunity to reduce board-approved levies. This would provide much needed funding for districts and potential tax relief to local residents and business owners. In closing, I would like to ask the legislature to fully fund this mandate to meet the needs of our students and allow local school boards, local control to consider tax relief for their communities. Thank you. I will pass it off to Superintendent Joe Gothard from the St. Paul School District.
Thank you, Mike, and thank you all for being here today. St. Paul Public Schools serves nearly 5,600 students in special education, which is about 17% of our population. Public school districts are required to serve students in special education from birth until the age of 22. We have special education teachers in every one of our schools, as well as hospitals, childcare centers, treatment and correctional facilities. St. Paul has 3 schools dedicated to intensive special education programs. Our special ed staff also serve non-public and homeschooled children. 1/3 of our students in special education are also English language learners, speaking 127 different languages and dialects. This requires an additional support for students and families to access services that are in their individual education plans or IEPs. All public schools are required by law to provide a free and appropriate education. That means we can't say no to any student who comes through our doors. We welcome all students, no matter what crisis, significant health need, or profound disability they may have. Hospitals can say no. We don't have a bed for your child experiencing a mental health crisis. Clinics and treatment centers can say no. We don't have a provider available to serve your child. And the wait lists are several months long. Public schools can't say no. That means that we must be prepared every day to serve the students who are in crisis, who may also be impacted by poverty or homelessness. Our dedicated staff in St. Paul Public Schools provide a high-quality public instruction and special education services, including speech, occupational or physical therapy, social, emotional, and support for learning disabilities, as well as transitional, life skill, and work training. We must provide a continuum of services that students in special education can access the same high-quality instruction as their peers. St. Paul's underfunding in special education is estimated at $51.5 million. I'd like to repeat that. St. Paul's underfunding in special education amounts to $51.5 million in being underfunded. Another way to look at this is $1,300 per student. Add that to our English language cross subsidy, and it's $25 million for a total of $75 million in underfunding from this state. Our taxpayers have stepped up to help us foot the bill, but the local cost of these mandated services is double what we receive from our referendum. Something must be done at the state level to ensure that every student has access to the high-quality education they deserve. At this time, I'm happy to introduce a partner to me, Leah Van Dassler, who's the president of the St. Paul Federation of Educators.
Thank you, Joe. I'd like to start off by saying that we've heard it several times already today. This is a statewide issue. This is not something that happens just in St. Paul, in Minneapolis anymore. This is something that we can experience everywhere in greater Minnesota, no matter the size of the district, no matter the quality of education that everybody is receiving. This has got to be dealt with, and there is a surplus, and this is ridiculous that it's not being dealt with in this manner. If the fully funding special education in St. Paul would allow St. Paul Public Schools to retain, recruit, and invest in critical training for our teachers and our paraprofessionals so that we can provide comprehensive services for our diverse student population. This includes the third of our students who and their families who would require EL support just to access their special education services. By closing the special education cross subsidy, our educators will be better equipped to support our students, which benefits not only the students, but their families and the greater community as well into the future. The St. Paul Federation of Educators and St. Paul Public Schools and our colleagues around the state urge the legislature to fully fund special education services this session. Thank you. I'm going to pass it back over to Joe Gothard now, Dr. Gothard, for some questions.
Thanks everyone for being here.
Why is this so hard? When you've got district, you've got legislators who represent districts, who are probably getting fearful every time they talk to the districts. This has been an issue for
40 plus years, 40 plus.
Again, I stand on the shoulders of many predecessors and colleagues who have been coming down here year after year for the same fight. But let's also not kid ourselves. In my 28 years as a public educator, we are also divided in ways that we haven't been as far over the same years. So every fight about resources is coming down to the political will of parties. And what we're saying is we'd like to unite as a state and come together for the children of our state.
Would you rather have this than more money on the general allowance? Is this more rank order?
I think, as you've heard from my colleagues, it doesn't matter what part of the state, the special education cross subsidy impacts everyone throughout the state. Every public school district is impacted in this way. And this is one way we can begin to write what we believe is equitable funding for all the students in Minnesota.
Is there a ballpark figure for how far the federal government falls short in its part of this? Because I've always had the kind of impression here that people are just waiting for the federal government to come to the table and do what it's supposed to do, and it hasn't happened. How much do they spend?
That promise in the 70s about up to 40% of funding for these mandated services has never been even close to being met. So you're right, this is not alone on our state. But again, we have the ability right now to do this. I've been told that it's 10%, 12%, 14% are figures that I can remember in terms of the amount that we get from the federal government.
Is there also ELL mandate from the federal government as well? You mentioned the ELL process.
I think it's an emerging funding that we get from the state, and it's something that, as I declared, is a very important to St. Paul Public Schools. But again, I don't think many people realize the amount of English language services that are provided throughout our state in different communities as well. So that too is equally as challenging.
You think if you can get this in the budget this year, it's here to stay? Because the budget surplus is one time, and this doesn't sound like one time. This sounds like something that's needed every year.
This has to be ongoing. So of course, we would like it right now, and we'd like it to stay. But understanding we've been working for years as well. My 9th year as a superintendent in Minnesota. We've been working to say that, we don't need this all at once. Let's create a plan so that we can be made whole in perpetuity.
So when I address the entire here, it's like most of you.
You're not wearing your red tie. Hi, my name is Jamie Nord. I'm the president for the Minnesota Administrators for Special Education, and we are wearing red today to create a sense of urgency around this topic. So you will notice that most of us are wearing red just to stress the urgency. This is long overdue. You can see on the sign over here. So that's just to get our point across today. Thank you for asking the question.
Do you know roughly how many children in Minnesota have an IEP right now?
The entire state.
This is an estimate, I would say 14-15% statewide is the average. So we're a little bit higher than the average from the speakers we've talked today.
Have other states done a better job of addressing this gap?
The interesting thing is this. With the whole COVID situation, we are seeing a significant increase in the number of students who are being identified for special education services. So the gap, I think, and that's in Minnesota, but I can say nationwide as well. And the gap is only growing bigger.
If you were to receive the funding, and here's how that would play out in terms of services, what the design would look like from a need-based sped service, particularly in Maine.
So again, I want to illustrate that we provide the services. We do. We're mandated, and one of the difficulties in this conversation is that we don't agree with being the leaders and practitioners and folks that are creating these budgets with leading inclusive school environments for our students. So it very much is part of what we believe in as part of our mission and vision. It's way more than just a mandate for us. It's part of who we are. The children who receive special education services in St. Paul Public Schools are all of our students, not only the special ed department, all of our students, all of our community. So I think that as we look at it, we're taking money away from other areas of the district to make sure that we provide these services, not to mention the reimbursable amounts that we also provide to our public charter schools as well, who have the ability to make up some of this cross subsidy. Again, this money would stay local, and it would give us the ability to plan and to serve our students in ways that right now are challenging.
Yeah, use this number before I walk in. What's this new body estimate for the recipients of services?
In St. Paul Public Schools, it's 5,600 students.
Statewide.
Statewide, again, 15-16% of the overall enrollment.
That's going to vary district by district, so we think that's a pretty
And we could provide those numbers as well. Okay, thank you all.
Get my sweaty
Oh.
thing here.
Very nice. You really, well, you were very measured. Good job, Mike.